Good evening. I'm Lori Rabin, a happy board member of Jewish Residential Services for several years, and now president-elect of the board. I welcome you to our annual meeting for 2020 from our beautiful clubhouse garden. Our theme tonight is the future of inclusion. Our mission is clear. JRS supports individuals with psychiatric, developmental, and/or intellectual disabilities, helping them live, learn, work, socialize, and thrive as valued members of the community. This evening, we will offer an overview of how we succeed at doing just that and take a valuable look into the future. Since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, we have kept our mission and our JRS community alive by developing numerous creative online programs and in-person experiences with safe contact procedures. This abundant garden is just one example of that. So, as you can imagine, it's all about inclusion. It is so crucial during these challenging times. The people we serve are included and enriched through JRS programs, the community, and Jewish culture. This in turn deeply impacts their families and worlds beyond. Tonight we will focus on the future of inclusion because to survive as a fair and just world, working toward meaningful inclusion for everyone is necessary. I want to welcome Rabbi Morty Rudolph, Executive Director of the Friendship Circle and one of our most valued community partners, who will offer tonight's Devar Torah. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rabbi Morty Rudolph, and I'm honored to deliver the Devar Torah at Jewish Residential Services annual meeting. As a fellow community organization, I am honored to really be here and to present, especially as well to honor the Volunteer of the Year, Rabbi Eli Zeidman, for all of his years of work and just communal leadership, and for everything he has given and continues to give to our community. When I think about the time of the year in which we find ourselves, we kind of have concluded the high holidays, concluded the holiday of Sukkot, and now begin the year. And it's fitting that we begin the year with the first Torah portion, the book as well, the book of Genesis, which begins Bereshit. And Bereshit is the first parsha, and as also means literally in the beginning. The root word, you may recall, sounds similar to Rosh, which means head, similar to Rosh Hashanah, which we celebrated a few short weeks ago. Although it may feel like many, many weeks ago, given how things are, or just yesterday, again, depending. But the idea of Bereshit, of Rosh, of the first, is that it's not just in the beginning, but Resh, the word Rosh, also means the head. As we know, the head of the year is what Rosh Hashanah translates to. The idea is that it isn't just the beginning of the year, but it actually flows, and there is an element of sustenance that comes from this first Torah portion into the Torah portions that will come many weeks from now. So too, Rosh Hashanah, the first of the year, has this degree of sustenance that flows from there into the rest of the year. That's a time perspective, also from the Torah's perspective, but truly from an inclusive perspective. When we look at a community, we also have that element of head and body. A community can only be as inclusive as it relates to everyone. There are some who may have the specialty of being a hand. There are some who may have the specialty of being the feet. There are those who travel it along. And there are those who have the head or perhaps the heart. Everyone has his or her unique mission and his or her unique ability that they can give to make a community the special place that it should be and can be. So when I think about Rabbi Zeidman and when I think about JRS and I think about an inclusive future, I must look at this as a benchmark for that and as a lesson for that. And that we really all have to view a community, the Torah, time, as this sense of body. And that everyone has his or her unique piece that they can give and lend to it, which in turn allows for it to function wholly and completely. And we all have to realize that. We all have to realize that no one has more of an importance than the other. No one has a special value over the other, but each one plays an important and integral role. And that is what makes our whole community a special one. So I want to wish a year of only success, of only health and happiness. And even though, again, celebrating Rosh Hashanah several weeks ago, we can still wish the best wishes for, God willing, a happy, healthy year, a year of only success in all matters. And again, a special Mazel Tov to Rabbi Seidman, and thank you again for having me.
Hello, my name is Mike. I'm a Clubhouse colleague and sit on the JRS Board of Directors and Clubhouse Advisory Board. I'd like to introduce Jerry Sperling, current JRS Board President.
I am Jerry Sperling, and I am honored to serve as President of Jewish Residential Services. I have been involved with JRS for about 7 years, and my respect for this organization grows daily. There are so many organizations and programs that profess to be inclusive without understanding what that term really means. JRS gets it. Inclusion does not just mean access. It does not just mean accommodation. Rather, inclusion means facilitating individuals with disabilities to participate in their communities, to have fulfillment in their personal lives, and to be treated with the dignity and respect that we accord to our peers. I recently came across a slide in a diversity and inclusion training workshop. That slide defined diversity as inviting a person to the party, but inclusion is asking them to dance. That analogy is particularly striking to me as a mother of an adult child with high-functioning autism. I remember my own experience of seeing my daughter in her 3rd grade religious school class. Although the religious school promoted inclusion, my daughter and the 2 other children in her class with special needs were sitting away from their classmates, separated by an aide. The class made a presentation, and the children with special needs observed, but did not participate. I still remember that when I expressed my anger to the teacher about how that was handled, she said to me, "But we're letting them be in the classroom with the other children." Lip service to inclusion is not inclusion. Seeing disabilities without recognizing abilities is not inclusion. Inviting individuals with disabilities to the party, but not asking them to dance, is not inclusion. So what is inclusion? My definition isn't necessarily that of a professional in the mental health or disabilities field. It comes from my experience as a lawyer who advises employers on ADA compliance matters. And it comes from my experience as a mother. To me, helping individuals to recognize their own abilities is inclusion. Providing supportive services to assist individuals so that they can dance at the party to the full extent of their comfort level is inclusion. And that is what JRS does. Our supportive living program assists individuals to live independently in their communities. The Sally and Howard Levin Clubhouse is a community that offers psych rehab services, but even more is built on the abilities of its colleagues. And through our partnership with Verland, JRS is facilitating individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to live in and participate in the Squirrel Hill Jewish community and beyond. I am so proud of our mission, of the services that we provide, of our committed board of directors and staff, and most importantly, of the participants in JRS's programs who work so hard every day to carry on in a world that does not always appreciate their strengths and abilities. Thank you for your support of JRS.
The clubhouses provide a cost-effective, holistic, and inspiring solution for people living with mental illness. Our member surveys confirm that coming to the clubhouse helps many of them avoid repeat hospitalizations. The Sally and Howard Levin Clubhouse was established by Jewish Residential Services in 2001. It grew out of a vision to provide people living with mental illness an environment to make friends, participate in meaningful work, and to have a community to which they could belong without judgment or reservation.
I depend on the clubhouse relationships and friendships that I have made over the years, and I am eternally grateful that I have a place to go to like this.
The clubhouse is such a fantastic environment for anybody who could use it in so many ways, whether you want to be part of the work order day, or if you want to spend 3 hours drinking coffee, then talk about hockey with the director.
Every time I come into the clubhouse, no matter what my mood, I leave with a smile on my face and a fresh burst of energy. I feel like a member of the family. I get hugs, I get smiles, I get a, hey Heather, what's up? What's new? I found my place.
Going here has given me a sense of purpose and a place of socialization. It really has impacted my life by helping me find my niche. I love cooking in our kitchen and helping other members express themselves through art, which has inspired me to enroll into culinary school.
This is a place full of good people. And here I'm allowed to give. Neurologically, I'm a mess, and these last few years, it seems like I just keep deteriorating, but I still have so much to give. We have much to offer and have chosen to come to a place we don't passively take and take. We do. We act, and many of us give.
We have to recognize that people with mental illness are, first of all, simply just people, fellow human beings, no different in their humanness than anyone without a mental illness. We are all just traveling on a human journey through life, and we are really more alike than different.
I have begun to blossom. The support, encouragement, and love from the staff and other members brings joy to my heart. I have a purpose here. People want me around. I laugh and I smile here. Some of my old confidence is resurfacing, and I feel alive. I feel like I have something to contribute to our community, and that feels fantastic.
Hello, my name is Eileen. I am a Clubhouse colleague. I receive supporting living service from JRS. I would like to introduce Judy Cohen, previous JRS board president and current board member.
Good evening. I'm Judy Cohen, immediate past president of JRS. It's my honor to speak with you tonight about the JRS volunteer honoree, Rabbi Ellie Seidman. Over more than a decade, Rabbi Seidman has volunteered countless hours to create Jewish connection and programming in support of JRS's mission. He has done this in many ways, and I'd like to tell you about a few of them. Our Hanukkah celebrations would not have been the same without Rabbi Seidman and his impressive collection of cheerful holiday-themed ties. Over the years, he presided over many such events, leading us in blessings over candle lighting and encouraging everyone to join in singing along with the band. I mention his ties not to tease him, but because they exemplify the way he makes himself approachable and makes Jewish connection accessible to the people we serve. Rabbi Seidman has also conducted our annual Passover Seder at Charles Morris Hall for many years. From greeting all of our guests with a friendly smile to encouraging them to participate, he has always made sure that everyone felt welcomed and included. Along with our partners at the Friendship Circle, Rabbi Seidman played a pivotal role in helping to reinvigorate the organization called the Western Pennsylvania Auxiliary for Exceptional People, now known as JOY. The mission of this entity is to bring Jewish programming to persons living in group homes and other supported settings located in and around Pittsburgh, so they can participate in the joy of holiday observance. Rabbi Seidman has been central to carrying out this mission and ensuring that volunteers who traditionally participated in the events could continue to be involved. Not only do we appreciate the fact that Rabbi Seidman shared his knowledge as a rabbi, it is also meaningful to JRS that in doing so, he exemplified JRS's values. In particular, that he enhanced the dignity and self-worth of each person served, that he did so in a culturally rich Jewish environment, welcoming to people of all backgrounds, and that he helped to ensure that holiday celebrations were meaningful and inclusive for all involved. That's why the JRS board recognizes him as a volunteer without equal. The slideshow that follows depicts some of our favorite moments with Rabbi Seidman. After that, you will hear from the rabbi himself. We wish you a joyful and fulfilling retirement, Rabbi Seidman, and cannot thank you enough for all that you've done for JRS and the people that we serve.
My dad was a rabbi in Washington, D.C. I know he visited St. Elizabeth's Hospital and the Veterans Hospital. And I think I've always felt attracted to the idea of reaching out to other people. My dad had a lot of compassion, so I wanted to be open to that. I was the chairman of the Greater Pittsburgh Rabbinic Association, and we got some calls that said they were looking for a Jewish chaplain for Mayview State Hospital. And we couldn't find anyone to go, so I went. So then a lot of those people from Mayview ended up getting discharged, and some of them were at the Howard Living Clubhouse. So I guess that's how I got involved. Favorite JRS memory? I guess the celebrations, especially Passover. Especially the Seder that we did over at Morris Hall. It was very interactive. And my favorite part of that Seder was the Dayenu. So all of the text, all of the liturgy stops, and we go around the entire room, and everybody says what they're grateful for, and then the whole crowd says Dayenu. So that's very moving. Really, because usually the Seder is a busy time, it's a little more intellectual, and this was more emotional. So I think that was probably my favorite. But I think the celebration of Hanukkah, and Sukkot, and all of the different holidays, I think JRS is very important in the Jewish community. I was thinking about it this morning, and I was thinking that even in biblical times, Moses mentions in reference to the Exodus from Egypt, he mentions that we're all going, all of us are going, in spite of what Pharaoh says, he says, with our youngsters, with our elders, we shall go. With our sons and with our daughters, we shall go. With our flocks and our cattle, we shall go. For it is the festival of the Lord for us. In other words, we are a community. And for a community, everyone's important. 100% of all of the people are important. We can't leave anybody out. And I think that's true of Pittsburgh, and it's true of the JRS, is that we value every individual. Every person has talents and abilities, and every person has a worth. So certainly that's true in terms of the Jewish community. It's also true in terms of the general community, that every person is created in the image of God. And we have to all be aware of that and respect that. Everyone has a story, and everyone's story is valuable.
Hello, my name is Kenny. I'm a Clubhouse colleague. I would like to introduce Nancy Gale, Executive Director of JRS.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Gale, the Executive Director of Jewish Residential Services. For the past 2 years, it's been my honor to serve JRS in this role. Since our last annual meeting, we've accomplished a lot as an organization, in spite of, and maybe even because of, the pandemic. Reflecting on that experience and how we've been able to cope with it, we're still making ambitious plans for the future. Ultimately, everything we do and plan is guided by our focus on inclusion, as Lori so eloquently put it at the outset. For example, over the past year or so, the Clubhouse piloted a community-supported agriculture program. And while it's impressive to know that we raised 324 pounds of food, what's especially meaningful to us is that Clubhouse colleagues spent time in the collaborative, purpose-driven work that gives structure and meaning to their lives. Because it's an activity that takes place outdoors, we have emphasized the opportunity to work in the garden as a safe way to participate in the work order day. Earlier in the year, we held our first ever and wildly successful moth-style storytelling fundraiser at the Clubhouse. We'll have some clips from this event later on, so you can see for yourself how moving the members' stories of their struggles are, and how JRS, through the Clubhouse, changes lives. We moved into a new building 18 months ago, the first time in the organization's history that the entire staff has been located at one address. More recently, we invested in technology through a generous grant from the Federation to help keep staff connected and feeling supported during these challenging times. We increased our advocacy efforts, participating in Jewish Disability Awareness Day, voter registration drives, and discussions of intersectional issues such as disability and racial justice. So what does disability inclusion look like during a pandemic? COVID-19 has brought the opportunity to learn something new and to challenge assumptions about how we provide services. That means we're finding new ways to support members and participants and to keep them connected safely. During the lockdown, we quickly pivoted to virtual programming, but we discovered that not everyone could access it. With the grant from the Federation, we've been able to offer the people we serve hardware, connectivity, and education on how to use them. I'm happy to say that all of the individuals we support have continued to make progress on their goals, have stayed healthy, and have adapted. And I'm particularly excited to tell you that we're moving ahead with establishing our second group home in partnership with Verland. With our help, Verland was able to conduct socially distant interviews of prospective residents and offered placement to 3 individuals in the Mount Royal home. We expect occupancy late this year. This will have an impact not only on the 3 people who will live in the house, but on their families and on the larger community as well. We were heartened by the warm, welcoming response from the immediate neighborhood, which embraced the idea that inclusion benefits all of us. Looking ahead, baseball fans may recall that Yogi Berra once said, "It's hard to make predictions, especially about the future." The current environment is uncertain. It's difficult to know what the next year or two will bring. While there are many future scenarios we can imagine for JRS, the one we're striving for is to expand our programs so that we can serve more people in new ways. Our planning assumes that social distancing and mitigation strategies will be necessary for quite some time. We'll continue to encourage and empower the people we serve to use technology to stay safely connected to their friends, family, and community, making sure they all have the same opportunities to participate in every aspect of life to the best of their abilities and desires. In the interim, we'll ensure that our direct support staff have the resources they need, whether it's PPE or programs that help them manage the stresses of the job. Finally, we'll engage in advocacy that involves meaningful efforts to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, both internally and with respect to the way we provide services. I want to thank all who make our work possible. We're so grateful for our generous donors and volunteers, our hardworking board, and the support we get from the Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh. A most sincere and heartfelt thank you to our small but mighty staff that is skilled, caring, enthusiastic, collaborative, and mission-driven. Nothing we do is possible without their efforts. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Sue Swenson. I met Sue when I attended the National Leadership Institute on Developmental Disabilities this past January, and was impressed with her intelligence, passion, and lived experience in the struggle for disability inclusion. She is president of Inclusion International, the disabled people's organization charged with securing the human rights of children with disabilities, adults with intellectual disabilities, and their families. Sue served 2 terms of the Obama administration as Deputy and Acting Assistant Secretary for Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, and as Acting Director of Disability and Rehabilitation Research. She was Commissioner for Developmental Disabilities in the Clinton administration and has been Executive Director of the Kennedy Foundation and the ARC of the United States. Perhaps most important, Sue learned a lot from her middle son, Charlie, who lived for 30 years with profound disabilities, was included in neighborhood schools, and always lived with his family and in the community. Let's see what she has to say.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for welcoming me into your homes as you take on the webinar topic tonight for Jewish Residential Services in Pittsburgh of the future of inclusion. I think there's a bright future for inclusion, and I will get to that very shortly. But a couple of points I want to make before I get there. First, we're meeting virtually, and that may seem like a compromise to a lot of people, something that we do because of the pandemic and we can't be together. And I know just as well as all of you do how much more warmth we get out of sitting in a room with people. I certainly find it easier to speak to people when I can see them. I can imagine you, but I want to say that this year I've really learned something about virtual connection too. It's in many ways better. It has been a boon to people around the world who can't always travel and go to a meeting, who can't be in the room when important things are being discussed. And now we don't have that excuse. We can bring everyone in for everything that we're working on. And I think across Pittsburgh, you have people on this webinar tonight who maybe wouldn't have been able to leave their home, even without a pandemic, and get together in this way. So kudos to you for finding a way to meet virtually and for giving your commitment to time and attention to really meet with each other and have things to talk about. I hope I'm going to give you some things to talk about tonight. The point isn't what can I say to you that advances your ideas about inclusion. I hope I can do that a little bit. But the point really is, what can I do to give you some ideas so that you can talk together, so that you can meet and discuss ideas and find ways to maybe move beyond some of the things that you're worried about or some of the things that you hope for, because that's where the real action happens. It's like a big meeting. The real action doesn't happen when the speaker is talking. The real action happens at the coffee breaks and in the hallways where you meet your friends and you talk about, hey, what did you think about this? What did you think about that? Hey, I heard a speaker who talked about this. You would have really liked that. Let me try to explain it to you. These are the human connections. It's not in a big room with a speaker. So let me just take this opportunity and thank you for inviting me into your homes where you're watching tonight. And this is my bookshelf. After World War II, we saw a new uprising of human rights. We saw, for the first time, really a world statement that said, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. That's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, written after the horrors of Hitler and World War II, written with input from philosophers in every nation and of every philosophical background, of every religious background, written with a strong commitment to the idea that if any of us are going to have rights and dignity, we all have to have rights and dignity. And this, I think, has had an enormous effect on people with disabilities in our world and is beginning to have a deeper effect. We are moving now. We have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, written over many years with a lot of input from people with disabilities and their families and the people who support them and experts in the field, but written to try to really move us forward with the idea that we have to find ways to express what human rights mean for people who have psychiatric disabilities or developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities. What does that mean? How does equality look if we're talking about someone who has these very, very stringent challenges in their lives? And the convention is not difficult. You can find simple, plain English versions of it. You can find it in every language. The plain English version is interesting. It was completed for people who have intellectual disabilities. And when the convention was first made available in printed form at the United Nations, there was a big table, and they had the convention as it was written, and then the plain language version of the convention. That pile was gone immediately. Everybody wanted the plain language version. Nobody wanted the original language version. Why? Well, it's a lot easier to understand. It's a lot easier to look at it and say, oh, I know what that means. Also easier to translate into world languages, of course. But something we think in the United States that because we didn't ratify it, that we're not part of that community of the future of inclusion and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I think since we signed it, signing indicates that you have the full intention to align yourselves with the principles. Since we signed it, we as Americans have the same right anyone else in the world has to read it, to understand it, to use it in our lives, to guide the thoughts that we have about how are we going to build lives for our sons and daughters within the context of our family. How are we going to build lives for people as they become adults and begin to have an independent life? What is their social life? How can we support social life? I know these are things you're all working on. And I think reading the convention will give you ideas that you can take and start talking about, how could we do this? How can we really surpass the expectation of what dignity is? So here's my key idea about the future of inclusion in our world. When Jefferson wrote those words, and when our Constitution was written in the very early part of the 19th century, the kinds of rights that we talked about were civil rights and political rights. Around the world, those were the rights that were focused on in constitutions in the 19th century. Later, in the 20th century, people began to think about, in their constitutions, adding language about social and economic rights. Now, a lot of that went kind of sideways. So it was China, it was the USSR, it was the notion of communism. Some of it was built into really strong communitarian constitutions in Scandinavia, in other countries, where the social and economic rights of the persons, of people in that country, are guaranteed in the Constitution. Now, ours aren't. We have Social Security, we have Medicaid, we have things that guarantee our security as we age, and our social rights, and our economic rights to live with a modicum of dignity as citizens of the United States, whether we're rich or when we're not rich, that guarantee that children have certain rights to participate in education. None of that is in the Constitution. The only thing we have in the Constitution is the 14th Amendment, written after the Civil War, that says you have the right to the same thing that everybody else has the right to. So if anybody has the right to a public school, then children with disabilities have the right to that public school. What that means, that we don't have them in our Constitution, is advocates spend all their time now protecting our rights, going to Congress, calling up their governor, calling up the White House and saying, don't take away my Social Security, don't take away my Medicaid. Thank goodness we have civil and political rights, but we're spending all of our time protecting our social and economic supports. The 21st century brings new ideas, and it brings the future of inclusion to the point of thinking about cultural rights and dignity. And cultural rights, yes, it does mean that you have the right to practice your culture. So if you are a person of the Jewish faith, you have the right to live your life with that being respected, and the same for everyone else. The same for Islamic believers and Christian believers and atheists. The same for everyone else. People who speak Spanish, people who have different cultural attitudes about transition, for example, about family life. Those should all be respected. And that's part of what cultural rights means. But what it really means is you have the right to participate equally in the benefits of your culture. All of the benefits of your culture. High quality health care, all of the things that we invest in as a nation to build our nation and to make it strong. We invest a lot of money in advancing health care, and all Americans should have an equal right, a cultural right, to participate in that benefit. And dignity is a part of this too, because if you have a cultural right to participate in your community or in your education or in your community of faith or in healthcare or in your social life, whatever that is, you should be able to do that with dignity. You shouldn't have to beg to be included. You should be included by design. And that is a really key issue attaching to human rights now, especially in the United States. Those of us as I had from my son Charlie. We had 21 years of IEPs, IFSPs, and then 9 more years of ISPs serving him in the community. There's a lot of budgeting and begging and thinking that goes into all of that. And where does dignity come in? Where does the poor family that doesn't really know which door to knock on? Where does the Latino family that's afraid to sue the school district or file a due process complaint? Where does the black family who's worried about inviting social workers into their home because they know too many people, way too many people, who have had their children taken away from them just because their cultural attitudes might be different, or their poverty is worse, or, and I shouldn't have said just black families, it's poor families, it's families who are barely holding on. Sometimes those are the ones who are least wanting to invite social workers into their homes. That's a problem. We have a problem with that, and thinking about the future of inclusion means we have to think about designing systems of family support, of education, of community support, all of the systems that we need, healthcare, everything else. They have to be designed to include people without begging, without suing, without filing complaints. People should be included because the systems understand who they are and what their needs are. And that's the future of inclusion as far as I can see. It really does come from us talking to each other, taking responsibility for each other. It comes in strange ways too, because you provide services, you are building the future of inclusion. When you are showing the world or a new family or showing a self-advocate, here's how you can be supported and well supported in your community with dignity and be seen as a full member of your community. That's changing the community. That's changing the whole idea of what inclusion is. There may be a young mother who sees you with your disability working in a grocery store, and she may never have thought about her child growing up and being able to have a job. But she sees you, and it blows her mind. It brings to her mind the idea that, oh, I better start working on education for my son or daughter so that when they grow up, they can have a job like this person has. You see what I'm getting at? When you're a family and you go out for dinner with your disabled son or daughter, and you show the world what it means to include people and to help someone have dinner with dignity, you are changing people's minds. There may be a server in that restaurant who has a brother or sister with a disability, and they've never seen anyone be included the way you are including your son or daughter. And they may go back and say to their mom, you know, I think maybe we should try to find new ways to include my sister in what we're doing, because I'm seeing it's possible, and I think we need to think new ways about it. The future of disability, the future of inclusion is about invention. It's about demonstrating good ideas. It's about supporting each other so that we have the courage to build on those good ideas. And I know you're going to do it. I know you can make Pittsburgh a shining light in the United States, and I know you can find ways to challenge the rest of the nation to do it better. Thank you for your time and attention tonight, and I wish you the very best in the coming year.
thank you to all of those who joined us this evening. We hope what you heard was informative, inspiring, and thought-provoking. Most important, we hope it has made clear to you the value of inclusion and the notion that we are all better for it.